to you now.
So I'm just going to play a video that Deanna's actually created for us. And then she is also on the line. You've seen her kind of pop up there on the screen. So, and then we'll pass it over to Nancy. So just let me know if for some reason you can't hear the video. You might have to turn it up a little bit, but I'm going to play it now.
Caitlin was born on August 25th of 2013. She is our middle child with an older sister and a younger brother. Caitlin suffers from cerebral palsy, secondary to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, and polymicrogyria. She has severe epilepsy, hypotonia, and global developmental delay. She is nonverbal, non-ambulatory, and she functions at infant level. Our medical journey started on the day Caitlin was born, and our feeding struggles started when she was 6 months old. I breastfed Caitlin right from birth, and the fact that she was able to latch and eat was a great sign and one relief, as we knew eating difficulties was a big possibility. At Caitlin's 6-month checkup with the pediatrician, it was determined that Caitlin was just not growing at a healthy rate. Caitlin was breastfed, so investigations started with my milk supply. It was astonishingly low. I was in denial that this content little girl was not eating enough, but the facts were there. How did I miss this? How did I not know? I was starving my child and I was oblivious. Caitlin was on seizure medications that were having a sedative effect on her, so she would eat, but she wasn't demanding enough calories to properly grow. An NG tube was the new normal for feeding Caitlin as we continued to try unsuccessfully to get her to take a bottle. Over the next few months, we tried everything from bottles, sippy cups, open cup, cereals, and solid foods. We had our first referral to the feeding team, and we were followed quite closely while we were in hospital. However, there was a huge disconnect between inpatient and outpatient services. Once we were discharged, we had to wait months before we would have another appointment with an SLP or any type of follow-up, and our subsequent admissions didn't always allow us access to inpatient supports. I continued with a few things that I had learned while we were in hospital, but mostly I just relied on mom experience and instinct. There was no plan or goal set for Caitlin at this time, as we didn't really have a clear team or contacts for support. Caitlin spent the better part of the next 6 months in hospital, undergoing testing and just working on getting her stable enough to live outside the hospital. Along with the feeding difficulties, we were facing several other medical challenges. Caitlin was having several status epilepticus events, putting incredible stress on her body, causing episodes of polyuria, and severely dehydrating her body. By the time Caitlin is 1 year old, she undergoes surgery to have a G-tube and a chest IVAD inserted. The decision to insert the G-tube was out of medical necessity for possible life-sustaining fluid administration in the event of future status epilepticus events. We needed to be able to quickly replace the fluid loss that could happen from the polyuria. Caitlin ended up with a perforated bowel from the G-tube surgery. She was incredibly sick, and the recovery is very long. For 10 days, the sole nutrition for Caitlin comes through IV TPN, and it was weeks before she could tolerate full feeds again. When Caitlin can finally eat and drink again, she has no interest. Many attempts over the next weeks and months becomes exhausting. Caitlin had lost all interest in anything in or near her mouth, and all progress we had made with oral feeding was lost. Caitlin is diagnosed with oral aversion. Let me tell you, I was crushed. I wanted to give up. I didn't feel that proper supports were available for our situation, and I struggled with what to do. I couldn't take away the experiences that food and flavors could offer, so I persevered into unknown territory. At this time, our main support came from inpatient services. We didn't have consistency with team members, and even with our history charted, we were having to retell our story with each admission and each visit. It felt like we were reliving our failures over and over. I felt shame And ultimately, I had a lot of negative feelings with oral therapy. I took every unsuccessful attempt as a failure upon myself. Fast forward to February of 2015. Caitlin is 18 months old. She suffers one of the worst status epilepticus episodes to date. Hours pass and the seizures don't stop. Caitlin crashes hard and her body begins to shut down. She goes into ventricular tachycardia and needs to be cardioverted. Caitlin is on a vast amount of life-sustaining supports and she is not expected to survive. I remember sitting at her bedside with the thoughts of planning her funeral, listening to every beep of the monitor, zoning out, watching the numbers, hoping and praying that something would change and show improvement, not knowing if we had seconds, minutes, or hours left before our little girl would leave us. Caitlin surprises the finest of doctors. Not only does she survive, but she recovers at an astounding pace. Caitlin will never be the same, and after all of these years, I still carry grief for the losses that we experienced. We were back to square one, with not knowing if it was safe for Caitlin to eat orally. Her oral skills and secretion management were negatively affected. Her oral aversion was amplified. In March of 2015, Caitlin was started on the ketogenic diet for seizure control. That would add yet another challenge to oral feedings and offering taste. No sweets, no sugar, and instead high fats, oils, and creams, and no one with the experience or expertise that we needed to support us. Oral therapy had been put on the back burner. It wasn't a priority for the next several months or even year. We relocated to Vermilion in April of 2015, and with our admission to the home nutrition program in Edmonton, we were followed by a new team of specialists. By this time, it had been several months since Caitlin had any oral therapy, and we were essentially starting over. We lived 2 hours away from Edmonton, and appointments were few and far between. I had a lot of frustration with the regression, and I felt defeated at the lack of improvements. I lost the passion that I once had, and any oral therapy seemed like a difficult daily task that I did not want to tackle. Nobody checked in on us in regards to oral therapy, and because it was left up to me to follow up, it just didn't happen. I needed someone to take the reins and just tell me what options we had, what supports were available, and to make a plan for me to follow. I needed simplicity and I needed clarity. After getting our local supports in place, we were blessed with an amazing SLP that was eager to learn about Caitlin and for Caitlin. We finally had the consistency and support that we needed to make the next chapter in oral therapy a positive one. We were all in uncharted territory, but we never gave up on the idea that we might find something that was suitable for Caitlin. We tried many different concepts and explored many theories, but overall, we let Caitlin tell us what was right for her. This was the biggest lesson that I learned in the feeding journey. I had to let go of the idea that Caitlin needed to eat orally. I accepted that Caitlin is fed, she is nourished, she is happy and growing, and although it doesn't look how we ever thought it would, that's okay. Today, Caitlin is 7 years old. She is 100% G-tube fed, and she still has an oral aversion. Even brushing her teeth is a challenge. Caitlin still struggles with secretion management, and next month she is undergoing surgery to have her salivary glands clipped. Caitlin is an amazing teacher, and through our journey, I am richer in knowledge than I ever could have imagined. I love for people to learn from Caitlin and our experiences, and I am so grateful for this opportunity to share just a small part of our story. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Deanna. And Nancy, I'll just let you carry on with your side of the story too.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you. We
Okay,
can see
great.
you.
Great. I wanted to thank Deanna. That was an amazing story. And I think my favorite picture was Liam sharing his bottle. That was my favorite part. So my name is Nancy Whalen, and as Julie mentioned, I'm an SLP in Vermilion. And Caitlin and her family became a part of our local team in 2015 and stayed with us until she entered kindergarten in the fall of 2019. As Deanna explained, Caitlin had significant feeding and swallowing difficulties that required support that we were not able to provide or not equipped to provide by ourselves. So she ended up being a wonderful teacher for us. So she helped us learn as a team how important it was for us to consistently communicate with each other and ensure that our roles were defined. So sometimes we saw Caitlin together as a group, but oftentimes that was overwhelming for her. So the majority of our sessions were one-on-one, and we rotated through SLP, OT, and PT. And so it was crucial that our recommendations and our strategies were consistent and always related back to the plan that the family had to help develop. So we would often debrief, well, we would always debrief as a team after every visit so that we knew what was working and what wasn't working. So Caitlin taught me that interprofessional communication is truly fundamental for any therapist as a therapist, but also even more importantly for a rural therapist. There were countless times that I would say to Deanna, I don't know the answer to your question, or I'm not sure what our next steps are, but I do know somebody who does know. So I relied heavily on the expert teams in the city for almost every aspect of our intervention, from strategies and resources to ensuring that our goals and recommendations were appropriate for Caitlin. Navigating the system was sometimes difficult for me as a therapist, so I really empathize with those families that say that it is a difficult task to find who you need to talk to and when, because I found that hard. So it sometimes took time to find the right person to answer my questions. I always ended up where I needed to be. It just took more time than sometimes I was comfortable with. When I listen to Deanna's story, I'm reminded of the families that did participate in the World Cafe that we had talked about earlier. There were definitely similarities in the feelings expressed that day and today, frustration, uncertainty, hope, to name a few. I'm really excited to be a part of this ILC process. I think the end result is going to be system-wide improvements that will benefit not only our teams, but the families that we're working with that are navigating this world of complex feeding and swallowing. So the starting point in this journey is ensuring our teams are working well together so that we can begin to start making quality changes that are measurable and that we can be proud of. So thanks for including us in your discussion and letting us share our story.
Thank you so much, Deanna and Nancy, for sharing your story. Just so appreciate your courage and willingness to share your story. It truly is very inspirational. The persistence and resiliency you've demonstrated, and the tenacity to continue to find answers to find answers to the questions that you had related to Caitlin's care. So, thanks again.
Thank you very much again for the opportunity to share our story. I do appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, it's hard to move on after that, isn't it? So please, Tracy Wasluk is here today, and she is the Chief Program.
Sorry, Elaine, I was just going to mention, if you want, we have about 4 or 5 minutes if people have some questions too.
Oh, thank you so much, Vanessa.
Yeah, for sure.
Any questions for Deanna or Nancy?
I would just like to thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's super meaningful to hear first-line experience and to hear from a parent, their perspective. So thank you so much.
I'm just curious, Nancy, how your team carved out that time. You said that it was really important for you guys to meet together to help coordinate care. Just curious to know, was that something you guys did formally, or was it just kind of on the fly?
No, it was something we absolutely had to do formally and make a joint effort in booking that ahead of time. So yeah, if we had a visit with Caitlin, we automatically threw in another 20 minutes to talk about how it went and what we need to do differently and what we need to change.
Nancy, it's Julie. I'm wondering about whether your opportunities in working with this family made changes in how your team works together in other situations.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost it really highlighted the importance of that of talking to each other with those little ones that need multiple therapists involved and multiple people involved, and have more than one team for sure. So we have talked about it as a team, just in general around, so who do we need to support in this way, and what do we need to do? So it has absolutely generalized into most of our multi-D practice.
Just another example about how Caitlin is encouraging us all to learn, right?
That's exactly it.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thanks